It's Tuesday, November 26th, and the word for you today. Our new devotionals have come in, so if you haven't gotten one, either call us or come in and get one. We want to make sure that you have the new devotionals. Today, it's about when God shows up. You know, there are times when life seems really tough, things are going very difficult, and then God shows up, and things change. Things are so much better. In Daniel chapter 3, verse 17 and 18, there's three Hebrew young men. They were taken as slaves from Jerusalem and taken to Babylon, where they were in a training program to serve the king. Their names were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You recognize those names. Their three Hebrew names were Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And they were brought to Babylon, and they were training to serve the king of Babylon. Well, King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had an image made of gold. It was 90 feet tall. And he told all the people around that when the music plays, and he had this band, this orchestra, band, whatever they were, when they played this music, everybody was to bow down and worship this tall image. Well, the three young Hebrew boys refused to do that. So the king called them in because he liked them. He called him in and says, "No, why are you not bowing down?" And he said, "Oh, king, we're not going to bow down and worship your image. We worship and honor God and him only." And the king got very angry. And he says, "I'm going to give you one last chance. You bow down and worship this image, or I'm going to throw you in the furnace, fiery furnace." They said, "Oh, king, if we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save us from it. And king, he will rescue us from your hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up." Well, that made the king furious. So he called the guards, had them come, had the furnace fired up 7 times hotter. And as the guards threw these 3 Jewish boys into the fire, the guards were burned up. Shows you how hot it was. A little bit, the way these furnaces were constructed, the king could sit at a distance and he could look into there and see. And he said, "Weren't there 3 thrown in there? There's 4 walking around. And the 4th looks like a god." So he called for the 3 Hebrew men to come out. And so only 3 came out, not 4, just 3. And they weren't burned. They didn't even smell like smoke. And think of the faith they had to have had to tell the king, "King, our God can save us, but even if he doesn't, we're still going to worship our God." So how can we be as faithful as these young men are when difficult times come in our lives? Well, let's take a look at that. First of all, we need to remember who God is and how he has come through for us in the past. In Hebrews chapter 13, verse 8, it says, "Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever." We don't have to worry about God changing or Jesus changing. We don't have to worry about that. He's going to be the same. The same one who protected those 3 Hebrew boys, the same one who can protect us today. So remember who God is and what he's done in the past to help you. And secondly, remember God is your strength. God is your strength. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9. "The Lord said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." God is our strength. It's not us. We need him. And as we are faithful to him, he is always faithful, and he'll be our strength when we need him. The third thing, pray and ask him for the strength that you need right now. Philippians chapter 4, verse 19 says, "And my God will supply all of your needs according to his glorious riches in Christ Jesus." Remember that God will always give you what you need. If you feel like you're being persecuted, if you are being persecuted, ask God for strength. He may or may not take you out of the situation, but tell you what he will do. If he doesn't take you out of the situation, he will give you the strength to go through it. And the fourth thing, trust him and be faithful. Romans chapter 8, verse 32 says, "He who did not spare his own son," talking about God who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? Trust God in your difficult times. Trust him and just be faithful to him. And he'll give you what you need. May not be what you want, may not be in a way that you expected. But just as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, just as God protected them, God will take care of you. There was a man named Clarence Jordan. This was years ago. He had 2 PhDs. One was in agriculture and the other was Greek and Hebrew. He could have done any number of things, but instead he chose to serve and help the poor. So in Americus, Georgia, he started this farm. And what they did was they grew crops for the poor whites and the poor blacks in this town, in the area. People in town didn't like that. This was the South, and racial prejudice was running high. And they didn't like that at all. And they tried to discourage them. Even when the people that worked on the farm, and they called it koinonia, which is fellowship, koinonia farm. When people from koinonia farm went to town, they would slash their tires. They did everything they could to discourage Clarence and those on his farm. But Clarence's farm, they kept producing crops and feeding the poor whites and the poor blacks. And the people became more and more angry. And after about 14 years, the KKK group got together and came out with their hateful way they did things. We came out with guns and torches and burned every building at the koinonia farm except for Clarence's house. Why did they spare his house? I don't know, but they did. And they ran people off. Well, Clarence was there and he could hear some of the names. He could hear some of the voices of people there. And they were supposedly nice people from town. One of them was a newspaper reporter. Some of them were people from the church. And they were acting in such a hateful way. The next day, things were still smoldering. Clarence got his hoe and he went out and he started hoeing the ground to get redo the mess that they had made. And the reporter came out and he said, boy, it sure is a shame what happened here. And so I just wanted to do a report on the closing of this farm. Clarence didn't say a word to him. And man says, well, Dr. Jordan, you got 2 of them PhDs. You've got 14 years here, but there's nothing left of it. How successful do you think you've been? That time, Clarence quit hoeing, stopped and looked right at the man. The man that he knew had been there that night burning things up. And he said, about as successful as the cross. Sir, I don't think you understand us. What we're about is not success, but faithfulness. We're staying. Good day. He stayed. They rebuilt the farm. Continues this day. Wow, that is faithfulness. When God shows up, you think after being threatened and burned out, okay, what more can I do? Faithfulness, just keep going, keep going. God showed up, and God continues to show up. Is there anything you're struggling with today? Anything you feel like you're losing a battle? God will show up. Don't give up. Remain faithful. Remain faithful, just like the 3 Hebrew boys, just like Clarence. Just remain faithful, doing what God called you to do, and then trust in Him. Have a good day.